I still remember the first time I heard the name Red Pine Camp. It was whispered like a curse in the backseat of my cousin Eli's pickup truck as we drove deeper into the forest roads of Northern Maine. The kind of back roads where cell phone signals vanish and even birds grow quiet. Eli was one of those tough, silent types, broad shoulders, always chewing on something, and not one to spook easily. But that day when I mentioned the camp, he shot me a look in the rearview mirror that wasn't just annoyed. It was something close to fear. "You sure you want to go there?" he asked. I had found the place mentioned in an old police file, buried beneath unrelated property disputes and abandoned land records. Red Pine Camp had been shut down in 1996 after a series of disappearances. Kids, counselors, even a ranger, just vanished. No signs of struggle, no leads, just gone. The place had a history, and I was chasing stories for my small but growing podcast Into the Dark North. This one felt different. The air around it was heavy, but I was hungry for something real. The road to the camp was choked with wild pines, and the sky grew steadily darker as we approached. It was only 3 p.m., but the trees were so thick that sunlight barely touched the gravel. As soon as we passed the rusted Red Pine Youth Retreat sign, nailed crooked to a tree, my stomach dropped. I didn't say anything, but I knew Eli felt it too. He didn't speak for the next mile. We parked the truck at what used to be the staff lot. Weeds swallowed the outlines of old parking lines, and the building ahead looked like it had been frozen mid-collapse. The main lodge stood 2 stories high, wooden frame eaten away by time. The door creaked before we even touched it. That was my first red flag. "Let's make it quick," Eli said. Inside, the air smelled like damp wood and old paper. Dust curled in the shafts of light, bleeding through broken windows. The main hall had peeling posters of camp events. Talent Night 1995, Cabin Cup winners, and Safety First scrawled in bright paint. It all felt frozen, preserved. Then I heard it, whispering, very faint, but definitely real. I looked to Eli. He heard it too. He pulled out his flashlight, but the beam seemed swallowed by the hallway ahead. I tried to play it cool, turned on my recorder and spoke softly into it. Arrived at Red Pine Camp. Immediate sense of unease. Whispering noises possibly caused by wind. Investigating. But it wasn't wind. It came from the counselor cabin next door. I approached it carefully. Inside, bunk beds lined both walls, most of them still made up with thin, moldy mattresses. There was something off about the room. I stepped closer to the last bunk on the left and noticed the mattress had been slashed open. Stuffing spilled out like intestines. Then came the knock. 3 slow knocks from inside the wardrobe. I turned to Eli, but he was already backing out. I opened the door. Empty. No animals, no hidden passage, just a child's name scratched. Into the back panel. Tobias. I noted it down. We'd only just arrived, and already I was finding evidence that someone or something was still here. We moved to the lake next. The dock had rotted away, half of it sunken. The water was still. Too still, not a single ripple. I set up my camera to record a panoramic shot. That's when I saw a boy standing across the lake. Barefoot, dressed in 90s camp uniform, bright. Red shirt, khaki shorts. He was still, arms by his side, just staring at us. My blood ran cold. "Hello?" I shouted. No response. I turned to Eli, but when I looked back, the boy was gone. We sprinted around the lake's edge to the other side, but there was no sign of him. No footprints, just silence and pine needles. We returned to the lodge. I decided to check the basement. The stairs were nearly caved in, but my curiosity won. I climbed down slowly, flashlight flickering. The basement smelled like mildew and a rust. Old filing cabinets lined one wall. I started opening drawers, most of them empty, until I found one labeled Incidents. Inside were handwritten reports. One caught my eye. Tobias S., age 9. Disappeared from cabin 3 during night. No signs of forced entry. No noise reported. Search unsuccessful. Dated July 13th, 1996. The last entry in the file was more alarming. Second child gone. Jenna M., age 8. Similar conditions. Beginning to believe something is in the woods. Requesting closure of camp immediately. Signed by the head counselor. I looked up. Someone was standing at the far end of the basement. It was Tobias, or something that looked like him. His face was pale, eyes completely black, mouth slightly open. He didn't move. He just stared. I turned to yell for Eli, but my voice wouldn't come out. It was like the air had thickened. I stumbled backward, knocking over a cabinet. By the time I looked again, the boy was gone. That night, we camped in the truck. Neither of us slept. At around 2:17 a.m., I heard scratching at the windows. Long, slow, deliberate. Eli raised his rifle, but there was nothing out there. No footprints in the dirt the next morning, only a small red handprint on the windshield. We were done. I packed up everything. As we drove away, I looked in the side. Mirror one last time. Tobias stood in the middle of the road behind us, smiling. We didn't talk for most of the drive back from Red Pine Camp. Eli lit cigarette after cigarette, his hand shaking slightly every time he lifted the lighter. I sat beside him, clenching the audio recorder in my palm, unable to stop thinking about Tobias's black eyes and that impossible smile in the rearview mirror. The silence between us wasn't just fear. It was confusion. It was denial. Something about Red Pine had attached itself to us. When I got home, I listened to the audio I'd recorded in the basement. I wasn't expecting much, maybe the sound of our boots or some creaking wood. But around the 23-minute mark, a soft voice whispered into the mic. "You brought him back." The voice was so close, so clear, like it had been speaking into my ear. I paused the playback, sat still for several minutes, heart hammering. Then I pressed play again. "Don't leave the door open." I immediately checked every door in the house. All were locked, nothing broken, but the air felt wrong, heavier. That night I heard footsteps in the hallway. I live alone. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hall. The floorboards creaked behind me. I spun around, nothing. But when I looked down, there were small, muddy footprints leading from the front door to my bedroom. Children's footprints. And then I noticed the door. The wardrobe in my bedroom, one I never used, was open a crack. Slowly I approached it. My skin turned cold, my breath shallow. I reached for the handle. It slammed shut before I could touch it. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, the flashlight trained on the wardrobe. In the morning, I called Eli. "We need to go back," I said. He didn't even argue. This time we brought more gear. Cameras, motion detectors, salt, and a drone. And this time we didn't go in the day. We arrived at dusk. Red Pine hadn't changed. It was like time refused to move inside its boundaries. The forest seemed even quieter, like the trees were holding their breath. We headed for cabin 3, Tobias's cabin. The inside had changed. Carvings covered the walls, hundreds of symbols, circles, inverted crosses, spirals, handprints, and names. So many names: Jenna, William, Leah, Sam, Tobias, all scratched in with childlike writing. In the center of the room was a circle of melted wax, and at the center of that circle, a child's tooth. Fresh. Eli looked sick. We shouldn't be here. Suddenly, all the cabin doors slammed shut, one by one, bang, 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 then silence. "Back to the lodge," I said, grabbing my gear. On our way, the woods around us began to whisper. Dozens of voices, all childlike. Some laughing, some crying, some chanting our names. Eli, Jason, stay with us. We reached the lodge and barricaded the doors. Eli took the drone and sent it up through a broken window. The monitor showed nothing unusual until it reached the edge of the camp. There, just beyond the tree line, dozens of children stood motionless, all wearing old camp uniforms, all staring up at the drone. One by one, they raised their arms and pointed at us. The feed cut out. Eli backed away from the screen. They know we're here. That night, we stayed in the lodge. I set up cameras in all four corners of the main room. I checked the EVP recorder, which had been running since we arrived. The playback was chaos. Children crying, whispering, giggling, humming lullabies in reverse. And one voice that chilled me to my bones. Jason, he's behind you. I turned. Nothing. We decided to sleep in shifts. I took first watch. For a while, nothing happened. Then, around 2:36 a.m., one of the cameras started glitching. I went to check it. That's when I saw him. Tobias, standing in the corner. His face was rotting. One eye missing. Skin hanging off like wet paper. He raised one finger to his lips. Shh! Then, he ran straight at me. I screamed, stumbled back, fell into Eli, and we both hit the floor. The figure was gone. We didn't wait for morning. We bolted out of the lodge and ran through the woods. But no matter which direction we took, we kept ending up back at the camp. The paths looped, trees moved. It was like the forest itself didn't want us to leave. Hours passed, maybe days. We stopped counting. Then, we found the tunnel. Behind. The main lodge, buried beneath brush and dead leaves, was a wooden hatch. Eli pried it open. A staircase led downward into pitch blackness. We looked at each other. We both knew we had no other choice. The air inside was foul, like something had died long ago and was still rotting. The tunnel went deeper than it should have. Too deep. Impossible deep. Along the walls were drawings, crude, childlike depictions of rituals, monsters, and a figure in black robes. At the end of the tunnel was a stone chamber. Dozens of children stood in a circle, all silent, unmoving. In the center was a figure kneeling, a man old and trembling, whispering prayers into the ground. He looked up. His eyes were empty sockets, his mouth sewn shut. The children turned toward us in unison. "Welcome home," they said in chorus. The floor cracked. A scream, like the sound of 1,000 tortured voices, erupted from the earth. A dark shape began to rise from the center. Something ancient, something wrong. Eli fired his rifle, useless. I threw salt, burned sage, nothing worked. The children began to walk toward us, slowly, smiling. And then Tobias appeared again. But this time he wasn't a ghost. He was flesh, solid and angry. "You brought us back," he said. "Now stay." Eli grabbed me and shoved me back up the tunnel. "Go." I didn't want to leave him, but the tunnel was collapsing. I ran. When I reached the surface, it was dawn. The camp was gone. No buildings, no trees, just flat earth and fog. I screamed for Eli. No answer. I stumbled to the road. Hours later, a forest ranger found me. They said there's no red pine camp on any map. Hasn't been for over 40 years. They tested my footage, the audio. Nothing, all blank. Except for one last image burned onto the drone's SD card. A boy, in a red camp shirt standing at the edge of the trees, smiling.